Thank you, Eric. Good morning and welcome to Sunnyside, where we are a people following Jesus. You guys are getting good at this. I'm going to put my coffee way over here because otherwise I'll spill it. So, hey, so glad to be with you guys this morning. As Eric had mentioned, my name is Corey. I'm one of the pastors here, and it is a privilege every week to be able to come and share a message with you. I love seeing this place fill up like it is right now. This is awesome, and it's only just a twinge of what God has in store for this place. Last week, we started a series called Good to Give. Good to give. And this is kind of modeled after the words that Jesus had spoken to us when he said, "It is more blessed to give than it is to receive." It's actually more, it's better. It is good for you. It is good for others. It is good to give. And I mentioned this last week, but I want you all to know that throughout this entire series, I'm going to do my very best that I can, not only to help you understand the goodness of giving, but also to convince you that it actually is in your best interest to give. It is actually to your benefit to be able to give. And so last week what we did was we started this off by looking at one of Jesus' most bold teachings and statements on giving. When he put these things next to each other and he says, you can't serve two masters. You either can serve God or you can serve money. It's either God or money. You got to choose one. And last week what we did was we learned that money is actually the word mammon, which is the godlike force of money. It is the godlike force of money that is trying to vie for your affection, to try to vie for your heart, to try to convince you that the things that can only be found in God can actually be supplied by him, mammon. Things like approval and identity and significance and provision, those are only found in God, but money will try to steal that from you because he's after your heart, and where your heart is, we understand that's where our treasure is, right? And so Jesus is after your heart, and he wants you to know that. And so he puts these things up next to each other. And what we learned last week is that the very best way to defend yourself from mammon is to give. Because every time you give, you're declaring independence from mammon, and you're declaring dependency on God. Randy Alcorn puts it this way: giving is the antidote for materialism. And so the very first thing that we have to do in this whole concept of giving is determine who is our master. And for those of us who have already claimed that, we already say that Jesus is our Lord and our Savior. You've made that statement. God is our master. And so then we have to figure out, okay, if you are my master, then what do you want me to do with your stuff? We were actually sitting down with our staff team this past week. We were doing our D1 together. For those of you all that are unfamiliar with D1, it's simply a Bible study method where we look at one chapter, we pick out one verse, we share that thought with each other. We encourage you guys to do this on your own or as a family or as a group. We do that every day as a staff at 9 o'clock in the morning. And we were in Romans chapter 6. And we were listening to Paul's words about this subject. He describes it a little different, but he says it this way. He says, you are either a slave to sin or you're a slave to God, but you're a slave either way. However, you get to choose who your master is. You get to choose who your master is. And once you determine your master, then it's a matter of moving on to how we manage his stuff. And that's where we're going to get at today. That's where we're going to go to today. Did you all know that there's over 800 verses in the Bible that deal with how to actually manage your money? Over 800 verses. It is talked about ad nauseum, and it's for our benefit so that we understand how to actually manage the things that God has put in our resources. And so what we're going to do is we're going to be taking a look at one of those teachings, going back again to the words of Jesus, this time in story form. Jesus gives us an understanding of how he wants us to relate to the things that he's put in our possession. So if you got your Bibles, go ahead and open them up, turn them on to Matthew chapter 25, and we're going to start in verse 14. This is what he says. Again, the kingdom of heaven can be illustrated by the story of a man going on a long trip. Okay, just put a pause on that for a moment. Last week I told you guys that Jesus talked about money more than he talked about any other subject in Scripture outside of the kingdom of heaven. Okay, today what he's doing is he's taking the story and he's bringing the kingdom of heaven and how you manage your money together. He's bonding them together. Now, every time Jesus tells a parable or a story like this, what he's trying to do is he's trying to convey a heavenly reality by using an earthly illustration for us to get it. And as he does that, what he's doing is he's putting these key players in place so that we can identify with these players. And so he goes on to say, he called together his servants and he entrusted his money to them while he was gone. He gave 5 bags of silver to one and 2 bags of silver to another and 1 bag of silver to the last, dividing it in proportion to their abilities. And then he left on his trip. Now, this parable, many of you guys are already familiar with. I don't want you to get caught up with the amounts that are in here. We're going to set that aside for a moment, okay? Some of you all have not heard it said like this. Is the NLT version. The word that's actually used there is the word talents. It's an actual measurement of money. But let's put that aside and not miss out on what God is trying to do here, what Jesus is trying to convey. What he's doing is he's putting us into the story, and he's claiming himself. He's setting himself up as master. He himself is the master. He is the boss. He is the Lord, and therefore we are actually his servants, right? And then he tells us this. What he does is he takes his stuff and he puts it in the hands of the servants, and he entrusts his stuff to his servants. So if we are his servants, that makes the things that we have in our possession his stuff. But we don't always think about it that way, do we? No, we don't always think about it that way. We think the things that we have in our possession, they actually belong to us, and we have, willy-nilly decisions to be able to make on that particular thing that we have in our possession. Oftentimes, when we approach our possessions, we see it more like this. Mine. For some of you, it's actually more like this. Precious. I've seen some of you guys look at your trucks like that, all right? So I've actually looked at your truck like that. But the reality is that this is the problem. God does not see it the same way that we oftentimes see it. And this goes back to something we talked about last week. See, logic and Jesus aren't always on the same path. And so when Jesus tells us something, if he's our master, we have to make a determination. Am I gonna shift my thinking to what Jesus says, or am I gonna continue to operate in like the ways in which I think? And this is, again, one of these stories. Jesus is challenging our perspective. He sees us as his servants whom he's entrusted his stuff to. The term that encompasses this mentality is actually the word steward. Everybody say steward with me. It's a word that we don't use a whole lot in our language. We don't use that word. And so allow me to define it for you so we have a working definition to go from. A steward is simply one who manages something on another's behalf. In other words, it doesn't actually belong to them, but it's put in their possession. It's put in their control for a period of time so that they can be able to manage that and do with it what is most advantageous for the person who actually owns it. That's what a steward is. We are simply stewards of the stuff that our master has entrusted to us. Now, we're in the middle of this giving series, right? So I need to make a distinction between giving and stewardship. You see, giving is what you actually give away, right? But stewardship is what you do with 100% of what is in your possession. It's what you do with everything that God has happened to give you. It's not just about what you've given away. It's not just about the percentage or a tithe or an offering, which we've not even begun to talk about yet, and we won't until week 4. But it's not just what you're giving away. It's everything that you have in your possession. It's all about a perspective. Do you see your stuff as being yours to manage, yours to do with what you want, or do you see it as being God's that you are managing and God's that you are doing things with? Am I being wise with the stuff that's in my possession? Because it's all on loan from God. It's all on loan from God. Now, I remember the very first time that concept came to play in my mind, and it was just like a light bulb clicked for me. And I think when we start to understand that everything that we have is on loan from God, then it starts to change our relationship to it and our perspective of it. That's exactly what happened in my particular situation. See, several years ago, between our first son, our first daughter, and our second kid, we ended up having a miscarriage as a family. And those of you all that have been through that, you understand how difficult that time is and the emotions that run through you. And we were just on the other end of this, and I get a call from a gal, and she's a young gal, and I come to find out she has just lost her baby, and she had a birth. It was a stillbirth, and she was asking if I'd be willing to do her funeral. And I got to tell you, I was just thinking, I'm like, man, this is too close to home. This is too recent. It's too hard for me to do. I don't think I can do that. And I remember just God nudging me going, Corey, why do you think that you go through the things that you do unless you're able to use those things for the benefit of others? You see, the comfort that I have offered to you is actually something that you can be able to offer to others. And at that moment, I realized that even my pain, if I give it to God, can be stewarded and managed in a way to help somebody else. And so I decided to do that funeral. Between that funeral and one that actually happened just a couple weeks after that for a 16-year-old girl, I started to realize something about the people that we have in our lives, in our sphere of influence. You see, every relationship that you have is actually a gift from God. Every moment, every minute that you get to spend with the kids that you have in your possession is actually a gift that God has given. We are not guaranteed another moment, another breath, another year. And oftentimes we don't think of it that way. We think we're gonna have our kids for a long time and then they're gonna go out at home and they're gonna come back and bug us because they want money, right? That's how we have in our mindset. But we're not guaranteed. We're not guaranteed another moment with our kids. And it started making me think about this. Everything I have belongs to God, is on loan from God. That means my kids are on loan from God. If God was to call them tomorrow, I'd praise him for the time that I had them. But am I asking the question, how am I stewarding my kids the very best I can? How am I instructing them? How am I growing them? How am I teaching them about the things? And then one day they are gonna leave my home and maybe they go to a foreign country, they go to another state. They were God's before they were mine. So what am I doing with these kids that are on loan to me? Maybe start thinking about my relationship with my wife. For those of you all that have a spouse, that relationship is on loan to you from God. You're not guaranteed another day, another minute, another breath with that person. What are you doing to be able to steward that relationship with God the very best you can? Because we're told that there's gonna be a day that we're actually held accountable for bringing that person to God. And so, what are we doing with it? I started thinking, okay, if my kids belong to God and my wife, actually, this relationship belongs to God, then like my car belongs to God, my house belongs to God, my clothes belong to God, my talents, my time, my treasures, all of it belongs to God. And I gotta tell you, it is a whole lot easier to be able to give of your treasure and your resources whenever you start thinking of your family and the relationships that you have is actually on loan from God. That's how it was for me. That was when a light bulb kind of clicked in. So all of a sudden I understand nothing that I have is actually my own. I haven't earned it. I haven't gained it apart from what God has actually given to me. So what am I doing with it? What am I doing with it? And as I start to ask that question, I start to ask another question, and this is it. Lord, if all of it belongs to you, what do you want me to do with your stuff? What do you want me to do with your stuff, your time, your talents, and your treasures? 1 Peter 4:10 says it this way. It says, each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. So Lord, what do you want me to do with your stuff? Jesus continues on with the story in verse 16. It says, the servant who received the 5 bags of silver began to invest the money and earned 5 more. The servant with 2 bags of silver went on to work and earned 2 more. But the servant who received 1 bag of silver dug a hole in the ground and hid the master's money. After a long time, their master returned from his trip, and he called them to give an account of how they had used his money. Okay, again, put the mathematics aside for a moment. Take a look at this verse here. The master comes back, and he asks them to give an account of how he used their money. Now, remember, this is a story where we're supposed to insert ourselves into so that we understand how God wants us to be related to money, to understand that he's the master and that we are the servants, and that he's put this stuff in our possession. He's entrusted it to us. But not only has he entrusted it to us, he's going to come and ask us someday, what did you do with it? How did you use it? A wise friend of mine once said this, and I believe it to be true, that I think when we get to God someday in heaven, the very first question he's going to ask us is, what did you do with my son? What did you do with Jesus? Did you receive him? Did you surrender your life to him? Did you model yourself after him? Did you take his truth over your own? What did you do with my son? That's the most important thing. That divides heaven and hell. That determines our salvation. But a question that he's going to ask really shortly after that is, what did you do with my stuff? What did you do with my son? And what did you do with my stuff? I think that's what Jesus is talking to us about right now. We are actually accountable for the things that he's put in our possession, and that is 100% of it, all of it. Now, guys, this has caused me to wrestle with some questions, and I've been frustrated by this past week, and because I've been frustrated with that, I want you to be frustrated with that, because that's the kind of guy that I am, all right? So I'm going to share with you guys a couple of questions that have been going through my mind that may spur us on to some things that we should actually be doing here in our context. The reality is this, those of us who go to church, we keep each other accountable for a lot of areas of our life, don't we? We have conversations with each other about our faith and our life journeys, and we'll keep each other accountable. We'll ask different questions. We'll check up on each other in matters of faith. Things like, are you going to church? Are you showing up on Sundays? Are you reading your Bible on a regular basis? Are you in any kind of, group where you're actually doing life with each other? We'll ask each other these kind of questions. We'll even hold each other accountable for areas of sin that we struggle in. How's your pride been? Have you been telling the truth lately? How have your eyes been? Have you been looking at any pornography? What about your alcoholism or your addiction? We'll ask each other all these even deep-seated issue things. We'll keep each other accountable for that. What's the one thing that we won't keep each other accountable for? This stuff. Somewhere along the way, we have divorced our faith and our finances from each other. But over and over again, Jesus goes, you can't do that. They are too tied to each other. Because where your treasure is, your heart's going to be also. You can't do it. They are so tied. We need to start having some conversations about this. And think about this, guys. If the Lord is ultimately going to hold us accountable someday for what we've done with our stuff, shouldn't that make its way into some of our conversations? Shouldn't we start having some conversations with each other out of love, not out of legalism, but because we care about this, because we understand that giving is really actually the very best thing for you, and it's the best thing for others, and it's the best thing for the kingdom of God, that someday you're going to be held accountable for this. I want to be prepared. I want to make sure that I'm using God's stuff wisely. And so maybe we should start asking some questions like this. Hey, where are your treasures at these days? Are you finding your heart tied up into mammon in any way, or is it all given to God? Or are you being a good manager of God's stuff? Or how are you growing in generosity these days? Are you being faithful, or are you robbing God? Are you giving anything at all? You got really quiet in here, by the way. Guys, I shared this with you because I want something for you. Not because I want something from you. God wants something for you, not because he wants something from you. If we're going to be held accountable, someday, I want to be best prepared for that. Maybe we need to start having some of these conversations. Now, as I started thinking through, what are the reasons why we don't? What are the reasons why we don't? I think, honestly, we've got this mixed up a little bit. One of the things, and maybe the more noble side of this, is we understand what has been told of us. It's like, don't let the left hand know what the right hand is doing. And for that sake, it's like, let's not talk about what we're giving. Like, you are giving, you are being generous, you are being a good steward, but I don't want to talk about it because I don't want to let my pride get in the way. That's the heart of the issue, right? It's your pride. It's not what you're giving. Now, here's the deal. Even if that's the case, I'm going to ask that you would just check your heart, but share your story anyway. And here's the reason why. Because if God is doing something in you and he's allowing you to be a good manager, he's growing generosity in you, how else can other people be inspired by that if you don't share it? More than that, how do us young people get instructed in what this actually means and how it matters to our life if we don't get to hear it or see it from you? You got to check your pride, but share your story, okay? I think the large majority of us, though, the reason why we don't keep other people accountable for this area of our life is because it's hard to keep somebody accountable for something that you're not doing yourself. Ow. Right? That stings a little bit. You need to understand, I understand this. There are times in my life where I absolutely don't want to engage with somebody else about managing money because I have not done what is right. I have not managed my funds well. I have not managed my money well. I have not asked God what I should do or what I shouldn't do. I've just done it on my own because I start thinking it's my stuff. So it's a lot harder for me to engage with somebody else because I'm not doing it myself. This is an area, guys, where we can't not have the conversation. We need to figure out how to have the conversation because he's going to keep us accountable. Jesus continues on with the story. He says, the servant to whom he had entrusted 5 bags of silver came forward with 5 more and said, Master, you gave me 5 bags of silver to invest, and I've earned 5 more. I doubled it. The master was full of praise. Well done, my good and faithful servant. You have done well. You have been faithful in handling this small amount, so now I'll give you more responsibilities. Let's celebrate together. And then the servant who had received 2 bags of silver came forward and said, Master, you gave me 2 bags of silver to invest. I have earned 2 more. The master says, well done, my good and faithful servant. You have been faithful in handling this small amount, so now I'll give you more responsibilities. Let's celebrate together. Now, again, I think with this passage, we automatically go to the mathematical side or the aftermath side. Don't miss out on what Jesus is conveying at this moment. It is possible for Jesus, our master, to be proud of us in the way that we use his stuff. That's what he's saying here. He's saying, hey, give an account of what you've given. You did a really good job. Way to go, man. Kudos. Let's throw a party. Well done, good and faithful servant. Jesus can actually be proud of us. But I think oftentimes, and we know this to be so true of ourselves when we start reflecting, we feel like he's disappointed in us by the way in which we've managed his stuff. You know, several years ago, early on in our marriage, we had just moved out to Arizona, been there for about a year. Saturday night service, a couple comes up to me, and I start having a conversation with them. Find out their name is Joe and Nella. They're homeless, and they came to the church kind of looking for some food and some direction, and started having some conversations with them and just saw something in them. And so I called up my wife, and I said, hey, I just met this couple, and can we invite them over for dinner tonight and just get to know them a little bit better? I always recommend that you call your wife before you bring a homeless couple over to your house for dinner, okay? That's a good idea. Now, I wouldn't put it past me, but I think I did call her at this time. So Joe and Nella come over to our house, and we share dinner with them. We hear a little bit more about the situation. We find out that there's some addiction issues that they've got that is kind of coming to this. They've been in and out of this relationship together. They're kind of unhealthy for each other and all that kind of stuff, but they don't have a place to stay. And so my wife and I started having a conversation. We're like, we have an extra room in our house. We're living in a 2-bedroom condo at that time. We have an extra room. It's not being used. It's just the two of us. It's like, what do you think about us using that room for Joe and Nella just until they can get on their feet? And so my wife was like, yeah, let's do it. And so we had that conversation with Joe and Nella, and they're like, well, we have to go get our stuff. And so I drive them down to the backside of a Safeway next to the garbage cans there, and they go and grab some of their stuff and bring it to our house. And they stay with us for several weeks. And as they're staying with us, we had our whole small group kind of involved in this, and we're starting to help them figure out some things. They're starting to take steps in their faith journey, and they're really open to that. They're taking steps towards getting free of their addiction. They're going to a Crossroads group. Joe ends up getting a job. We help find him a job in the construction field and get his tools back. They're kind of staying at our house and staying at another person's house at the time. And so all of this is going well. We're seeing some really good things happening with them. Now, there was a problem, and one of the problems was as they're getting this stuff together, and Joe was working construction, he needed transportation to get to and from the construction sites that he was going to, and unfortunately, I wasn't able just to drive him everywhere. And so I had an old truck at the time. It was an 88 Ford Ranger. Loved that thing. It was great for what I was doing for sports ministry, but I was close enough to the church that I didn't really need it at the time, and so I talked with my wife, and we're like, yeah, I think we could let Joe borrow the truck to go back and forth to his construction site. And so we started letting him borrow the truck, and he's going back and forth, and everything's going well. Everything's going well. At this time, they were actually staying at another person's house in our small group, and I get a call from him on a Tuesday night, and he says, hey, Joe and Nella didn't show up tonight. I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, they didn't show up tonight. So we call Crossroads, the ministry that was helping them get free from their addictions. And I called him, hey, did Joe and Nella come over there tonight? No, they hadn't been here either. And so we're thinking to ourselves, oh no, this is not good. Something's happened. Maybe the car broke down. Maybe something's going on. And we start calling other people that might be able to get connected with them. To no avail. Don't show up Tuesday night. Don't show up Wednesday. Don't show up Thursday. At this point in time, we're resolved. We understand. Joe and Nella have taken off with our truck. What you guys don't know is that previous to that, my wife and I had a conversation, and we were seeing such progress in the lives of this couple. We saw what God was doing. I came home one night after hearing a message, and I told my wife, I said, I think I'm supposed to give Joe my truck. And she goes, okay. No, don't do that. Like, okay, yeah. Didn't have to convince her at all. Yeah, I think we should give it to her, but let's wait. Let's give them 2 months. Let's get them back on their feet. Let's make it a Christmas present. And so 2 months from now, it was a blessing that was waiting for them to receive. But Joe and Nella missed out on the blessing because they took off with a truck. They tried to steal a blessing instead of receiving it. And I got to tell you, I was mad. I was furious. I was so upset, and I wasn't even that mad at Joe and Nella. I wasn't even that mad because I'd already resolved to give the truck away. I didn't care at this point about the truck. I was mad at God. Have you ever been there? I was mad at God. I'm sitting there going, God, I have done everything I feel like you're asking me to do with your stuff. I was willing to hold it open-handedly. I was willing to let it go. We opened up our home. We opened up our hearts. And then this happens. Where's the blessing? They didn't receive it. We didn't receive it. I'm ticked. Weekend goes by. Monday comes around. My business administrator at the church had heard about this, and so he called me into his office. He says, Corey, tell me your story. What's going on? I let him know all the stuff and how I was frustrated, and I was okay with the truck and just really disappointed. He said, well, I got a story to tell you, Corey. And I said, okay. And he said, there was a couple in the church that heard of your kindness and heard of your situation, and they donated a vehicle on your behalf. They want you to have it. Less than a week removed from this happening. I'm sitting in the office, and God provided. He's my master. I'm leaning on him. He is the provider, not Mammon. I'm not leaning on that in the first place. He is my provider, but I'm still kind of upset about this whole situation. But I'm grateful. I'm grateful that God has provided. And so he's like, well, you want to go see the car? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Let's go see the car. And so like my heart is just filled with gratitude for God because he's come through. He's not let me down, right? And we were walking out to the lot, and everybody else is gone. There's only 3 cars in the parking lot. There's a sports car, there's a nice SUV, and there's this old junker. and in my heart, I'm thinking, I'm grateful. I'm grateful. I'm grateful. And so I start heading towards the old junker, and Steve goes, where are you going? I said, that's the car that was donated, right? And he goes, no. This is the car that was donated. I said, that 10-year newer SUV Honda Passport that I couldn't buy if I wanted to and couldn't trade my car in for anything, that's the one? Yeah. That's how God works. That's how God works. God wanted me to know at that moment that was him in this moment. Nobody else. Yeah, he was working through another couple in the church, allowing them to be good stewards of the things that they had in their possession, to be a blessing to me, but it was God. And he wanted me to know by giving me a 10-year newer vehicle, a much nicer vehicle than I could have ever bought at that point in time. That's how God works. He does this so that we don't think for a moment this was happenstance or this is circumstance. It was God in the moment. When Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego get out of the fire, they come out, not only are they saved, they don't even smell like smoke. When Elijah is calling on God to be able to show and prove himself with the prophets of Baal, he not only takes the sacrifice, he demolishes the altar and he laps up the water in the same breath because he wanted to make sure people knew it was him. And this was God saying, Corey, I want you to know this was me because I am pleased with you. Well done. Well done, good and faithful servant. Questions we need to ask. Lord, what do you want me to do with your stuff? And then, Lord, are you pleased with what I'm doing with your stuff? And there's an answer for that. God lets us know that. He tells us when he's pleased. And this is how he tells us, guys. Remember, giving is good. Giving is good because it reminds us that it's not our stuff in the first place, but it's also good because when we are good stewards of it, the result is God trusting us with more. The way that God shows us that he's pleased with the things that he's put in our possession is he gives us more stuff. He gives us more stuff because he says, you know what? You did a good job with that. Now thinking back on that, I wouldn't have been any less faithful. I would have been a little bit more wise in how I managed that. But God didn't want to discount that against me. He wanted to encourage me. He wanted to say, you know what, Corey? When you give stuff away like that, when you're obedient regardless of what happens, I got your back. And those of you all that have had these experiences, I know you have, you know that, but we need to be reminded of that because we start to hold it so tightly and we forget that it was his in the first place. He says, let it go. Giving is good for you. It is good for others. It's truly good to give. Now, there's a lot more to that story. I'm not going to go into all the details, but I don't want you guys to miss out on this part because God gets the glory. Later that week, my truck ends up getting recovered. It's not in great shape, but we had already determined that we were going to give that away. And so we found some guys that helped work it up a little bit and get it nice and ready. And because we'd already determined in our heart we're going to give it away, we started looking, who's the person that needs this car? Lord, what do you want me to do with this truck? And so God put a young lady who just graduated, didn't have a father figure in her life, was getting ready to go to college. My wife had been working with her, and we were like, she needs our truck. And so we gave that truck away. Unfortunately, Joe and Nella were found, and because they needed to be taught a lesson, they ended up getting prosecuted, and Joe ends up going to prison, and Nella at a halfway house. Several years later, I think it was 3 years later, he shows up at an event that we're doing, a big, huge event in the park, and he starts coming straight toward me. And I'm thinking, oh man, this is it, Lord, I'm ready to come meet you. Just put this guy in prison. He comes straight up to me, he gives me a big bear hug. He said, I'm sorry for taking advantage of your kindness, and I thank you for putting me in prison. Because in prison, I found Jesus, and now he's my Lord and Savior. All because of stuff. All because of stuff. You open up your table, open up a room, open up a car, open up your heart. God can save lives that way, guys. He can expand his kingdom. And I don't tell you guys that so that you can look at me and go, oh yeah, Corey's so great, he gives his stuff away, okay? You can have my HHR if you want it. I'll give that to you. I tell you this so that you can be inspired. I tell you this so that you can be encouraged. I tell you this because I know that at the very core of my being, I am simply a steward of the things that God has put in my possession. And so if he asks for it, if he wants it, if he desires it, if he wants me to give it away, yes, Lord. That's how he wants us to live our lives. The story continues on. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time about this. The last guy, he's buried his stuff. God is incredibly disappointed with him. Jesus says, he's like, you know what? Take what he's got and give it to the guy who's got a lot. All right, that's what he says. And then he ends up with this and he says, to those who use well what they are given, even more will be given. To those who use well what they are given, even more will be given. Now, to whom much is given, much is expected. When you have great responsibility, when you have great wealth, when you have a lot of stuff, God actually demands more of us. He's going to keep us accountable for all of it. But if you're faithful with a little, you'll be given even more. You guys need to understand that this is not a prosperity gospel. This is not a matter of you give $1 and I'll give you 10 stuff. This is not how it works. This is a matter of us being faithful with God has put in our possession and then being able to use it well. And when he does, he goes, you know what? You're worthy of my trust. I can see that this is not going to take hold of your life, that it's not going to cause you to go to mammon. I can see that you can use this well and my kingdom will be grown. Therefore, I'm going to give you more. Guys, I don't give in order to get. I get so that I can give. That's how it works in God's economy. And so a prayer that I've been praying lately has been like this. Lord, bless me with as much as I can manage well. And Lord, don't give me more than what I can be faithful with because I don't want it to have my heart. I want to hold it like this. Guys, what we're going to do is we're going to end this message a little differently than what you might expect. We're going to do another offering. You're all thinking, yeah, I knew it was coming. We're talking about giving. Here comes another offering. But this is going to be an offering unlike you've experienced before. Matter of fact, I want the ushers to go ahead and make their way up front with these boxes. They're going to go ahead and make their way up with the boxes. And this time, instead of putting something in to this box, what I want you to do is I want you to take something out of the box. There's an envelope inside of each of these boxes. And so as soon as you guys have those boxes, start distributing them around. There's an envelope inside, and it says good to give on it. It's got our name on the top. And there's something inside of here, okay? What I don't want you to do is I don't want you to open it up. I don't want you to hold it up to the light, okay? But there's money inside of these envelopes. And so I want each of you guys just to take one. I hope that we have enough for everybody. We had a lot of you guys show up today. You all must have heard I was giving out money today. So, if you don't, just stay with us and we'll figure that out. Now, here's the deal. Last week you heard me say this, and I just want to reiterate this. You all need to understand the reason why we're talking about giving is not because this church needs your money. The reason why we're talking about giving is not because Jesus wants your money, that he needs your money. He's got all that he ever needs. He wants your heart. And he understands how closely tied our resources and our stuff has to do with our hearts. And he understands that the things that he puts in our possession have the ability to make kingdom-lasting impacts if we would simply be able to use it the way that he has called us to use it. And so, guys, I'll reiterate this. I don't care if you give a dime to this church, but give something somewhere so that mammon doesn't take hold of your life, so that you can start to experience the blessing of what it is to be able to give. And today, we're actually going to resource you. We're going to resource you with a little something in order to be able to help spur that on. So we are still, how long does it take for y'all to grab an envelope out of a box? Come on. Yeah, hurry it up, a little fast. Move it along. I'm running out of stories again. Anyway, as they're coming up, okay, we're going to be able to do that. We're going to take these envelopes. And you all might have been a part of some other things like this, a reverse offering, if you will. But we're going to do this a little bit different today. And the way that we're going to do this is we're going to do a little illustration to help us understand how God wants us to be able to hold our stuff. And so everybody with you, like right now, what I want you to do is I want you to hold your hand out like this. Okay? Can you receive an envelope if your hand's like that? No, you can't. You can't receive an envelope like that. You can't receive anything like that. You might receive a fist in your face if you hold your hand like that. Okay? Now, I want you to open your hand up. Can you receive something now? Okay. The problem is if I hold something like this, stuff can get out too, right? If I'm holding my hand like this, it's harder to hold on to the things that I've got, but I can at least receive some more. Next week when we get together, what we're going to be doing is we're going to talk about what it looks like to live open-handed. We're going to be going into week 3 where we're talking about getting generous with it, all right? We'll even have Joe come up here and do a little jig and a dance, all right? It's going to be good. But next week, we're going to talk about getting generous. But understand, we cannot be generous. We can't step into generosity. We can't have conversations about even faithfulness until we understand these 2 first things that we've been talking about. Who is our Lord and who is our master? Because you got to choose one, right? And so if our master is Jesus, then what am I doing with this stuff? Because stewardship is 100% of what we're doing, and we will be held accountable for 100% of everything that we have in our hands, not just what we give away. But the good in giving for us in this regard is simply this. When we give, we realize it's not ours to begin with. It keeps us from living closed-fisted. And when we give, God consequently gives us more to be able to manage. Okay, everybody, I think, has an envelope. If you don't, sorry. Should have sat in the back, I guess. I don't know. There's a benefit in the back. Okay, so if you don't have one, I will give you one. No, not Isaac. I can't trust you with that. I'm just joking. You got some more? You got a few more? All right, Joe's giving them out. So here's the deal. Everybody, I want you to hold up your envelope in the air like this. Don't look in that. Don't look in it. Don't look up to the lights or anything like that. Don't look at it, okay? Everybody's got your envelope. Say, it's good to give. It's good to give. Now, what I want you to do with that envelope is I want you to hand it to somebody that you don't know. Go ahead and do that. All right, now you got a new envelope. Let me ask you a question. Was that difficult? No. Why? It's not yours. I just gave it to you. I gave you clear instruction on what not to do and what to do with it. And so it was easy. I had no physical attachment to it. In fact, you didn't even know what it was, did you? Right? Okay, now what I want you to do is nice and gently, okay, because you want to reuse these. I want you to open up the envelope, okay? And I want you to check and see what you got inside. Some of you got some 5s. Some of you got some 10s. Others of you got 20s. Some of you have 100. Actually, you don't. I didn't put any 100s in there. We don't got that much money here. All right, y'all got it. Everybody hold up your money. Hold up your money. Woo! Okay, put it back in the envelope. Hurry up before you get attached to it. Okay, now I want you to take out an envelope and I want you to push it back down and I want you to give that away. Somebody you don't know. Go ahead, do that. All right, settle down now. It's not the stock market, guys. It's just an exchange. All right, here we go. For some of you guys, you just gave your 20 up for a 5, and you're pretty ticked about it right now, okay? But let me ask you this. Even though it might have been a little harder, you had it for a little longer, you even knew what it was it that hard to give away? Why not? Not your stuff. You just had it. You were given clear instruction on what you were supposed to do with it and not do with it. Sure, you can get sentimental about what you had. Eric just gave me his $5 bill. Thank you very much, all right? But here's the deal. It doesn't belong to you. It was given to you. You were asked then to simply steward it, to be able to, in this case, give it away. That's how we should see the stuff that God has put in our possession, everything. As simple as this is, it's just a simple illustration. It's just a couple dollars, right? That's what God wants to see with our life. And I tell you, if we can't do it with just this, we won't ever be able to do it with more. It's an incremental trust that God puts in our position. And for some of us, if he was to give us a bunch of this stuff right now, it would ruin us and we wouldn't do anything good for the kingdom of God. But when you're faithful with little, God gives you more. Here's what I'm going to ask you to do with this envelope this week. I'm going to ask you to ask the Lord, Lord, what do you want me to do with your stuff? What do you want me to do with this envelope? Will you put somebody in my path? Will you put somebody in my mind? Will you allow something random to happen even to where I go, I know exactly what I'm supposed to do with this, and I want you to give it away. Because giving reminds us that it's not ours to begin with, and it allows God to actually bless us with more. For some of you, when you ask that question to God, he's going to say, actually, I want you to add to it. Add a 5 to the 5, a 10 to the 10, a 20 to the 20. I want you to double it, and then I want you to give it away. It's not yours in the first place. Offer it to somebody. Okay, what I want you to do is everybody hold up your envelopes. I want you all to give them back to me. I'm just joking. Simon didn't say, all right? I want you to give them away this week. And preferably, don't give them back to the church. Please don't give them back. And preferably, don't give them to somebody in this room unless God has put them on your heart because you know their situation. I want you to give it away. And then this week when you're sitting around your dinner table, I want you to have a conversation with your family and your kids. What'd you do with your stuff? In your small groups, in your gatherings, when you're getting together, I want you to talk with each other. Hey, what'd you do with your stuff? When you show up here next week for Getting Generous, I want you to be out here in the lobby. Hey, what'd you do with your stuff? So that we can be inspired to be able to see people's stories and to use God's stuff better. Right? Not so that we get some kind of credit or glory making us look good, but because God gets glory for the way in which we use his stuff. That's what it looks like to be simply a steward. Pray with me. Father, thank you. Thank you for giving us these kind of illustrations and these kind of understandings. It is so challenging sometimes, Lord, because we get in binds, we get in moods, we get in mentalities where we don't see our stuff as yours. Challenges on a daily basis. Help us to be able to help each other because we know we're going to be held accountable and we know the blessing that comes with giving and using your stuff well. So keep our minds focusing on that. I do pray, Lord, that you'd bring somebody to mind, bring somebody in our path that desperately needs to be able to experience the love of God, even if it's $5. And let that story expand your kingdom. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.